What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Matt and Clint are going to be joining me in just a minute to talk about the Final Four this weekend, as well as the championship game in what has been a crazy tournament. But before we get there, tonight is the night. We have waited 16 long seasons for the Sacramento Kings to return to the playoffs. They need to win one more game, and tonight they play the tanking Portland Trailblazers, who just shut down Damian Lillard for the season. The Kings are minus 1,100 point favorites. I think this is it. Man, the last time the Kings made the playoffs, I was 16 years old. Now I'm 32 and I have a child of my own. Did not expect it to take 16 seasons for them to make the playoffs again. But here we are. It's been a hell of a season, hell of a turnaround in Sacramento, and it's been super fun to watch. Especially for those of us who have stuck by this team through thick and thin. And for the last 16 seasons, it's been a lot of thin in Sacramento. So go Kings, light the beam. Let's clinch this playoff spot tonight. And Matt and Clint are coming on to talk about the Final Four. Let's go. All right, Matt is here, and back by popular demand, we brought Clint back to round out this NCAA tournament with us. Guys, how you doing?
Wrong.
I think you and like the vast majority of America is pretty wrong at this point. The tournament did not go how almost anybody expected.
Yeah, I would say I imagine outside of living in a really big house, this is what Stephen A feels like when he rolls out of bed after all the incorrect predictions he has. So I'm like licking my wounds right now.
Yeah, you guys aren't the only ones. CBS says that only one out of every 600,000 brackets that were submitted got the Final Four correct. ESPN said that only 20 of the 20 million brackets submitted on ESPN had the correct Final Four.
Those are literally people who picked their bracket by like flipping a coin.
So I have a different conspiracy theory that I'm going to propagate on this podcast. And it was all done by AI. Like those brackets were not done by a human being. It was AI based. I don't know how to prove it, but that's what I'm sticking to.
Loeb really got in your head, didn't he?
Oh my gosh. That's been okay. So a sidebar. Loeb is I was showing Matt this today. So there's like the disturbing art generated by AI, and the long and short of it is they took a picture of Marlon Brando and came up with like the complete opposite of what Marlon Brando would be, which was like a minimalistic skyline with some text. And then they put that in and they did the negative integer for that. And it came up with like this really bizarre looking woman who they nicknamed Loeb. And then they just had it generate it. And it kept just like being really morose, macabre imagery of this lady. Like the content in the picture would change, but the woman would always like be there. And it's like really disturbing stuff. So I was just like, I went down a rabbit hole one night and then I got reminded of it today and I showed Matt and he got to see all the horribly disturbing AI generated art that's scarier than what the average mind can come up with. So
yeah, those people like H.P. Lovecraft would have looked at that shit and been like, "Yo, that's fucked up."
Yeah, it's cool, guys. Nobody that's listening to this podcast wanted to sleep tonight anyway, so
yeah,
it'll be fine.
Now they can join me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think someone just went and put the March Madness bracket into Chat GPT, and they're just like, this is what it spit out. This is the type of shit where if you were playing a video game and these were the Final Four teams in your game, you would like take a picture and send to your friends and just be like, how stupid is this game? Like that, I was looking at the schedule this weekend and it's like Florida Atlantic versus San Diego State on Saturday at 6. I have a buddy who lives in San Diego who told me that this game sounds like a game that he would be offered free tickets to in San Diego and say no.
My thing is I love listening to like the actual pundits and things of that nature talk hot shit about how they're not interested, but everybody raves about like March Madness and upsets and stuff. And it's like, how can you bitch about this when this is what everybody wants? It's just like the it's been amplified to like the nth degree, right? So instead of like one school, it's three. Like, and everybody, all the big news media outlets are, you know, complaining about how they're not interested and it's not a sexy narrative. And it's just like, this is what everybody wants normally. Like, you guys got it and you were told that you were wrong. So who's really right?
We talk about this with March Madness every year. Is that like, is there a point of critical mass where it's too many upsets? And for people like us who do sports podcast and like are hardcore sports fans, we would say no. Like, if the Final Four was like a 16, a 15, and 2 13s, we'd be in heaven. But I do think,
agree,
I do think there is like a point of critical mass on this stuff for casual viewers, where when they want the upsets in the beginning because it's like fun for their bracket, and they're like, yeah. But then when you get deep into March Madness and all of your brackets are busted and you're just watching the games, the casual viewers want to see like what we had last year, where it's like Duke versus North Carolina and the winner plays Kansas because they know those schools and they know those people. I would say that probably like 75% of people, maybe even more, don't know where Florida Atlantic is. Like, I bet you any amount of money Stephen A had to look that shit up before they went on First Take.
I think he was baffled when he found out it was in Florida.
I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. We want to celebrate the 4 schools that are here. I love this Final Four. It's so interesting to me, and it's kind of cool that no matter what happens here, a mid-major is going to play for the national championship. I know Gonzaga's a mid-major, but they don't feel like it because they're so good and they bring in like so much talent in their recruiting classes and stuff. So like, while I root for them to play in the national championship, like, it's like kind of still a big school. This feels like it's like an out of nowhere mid-major. One of them, either Florida Atlantic or San Diego State, is going to be in the finals.
Definitely more Florida Atlantic. San Diego State has been really solidifying that program the last like 5 or so years. They've been consistently very good, but not on this level before. So, I mean, it's a huge jumping off point for them, along with obviously these other 2 teams as well.
I think the thing that's really surprising about it was watching the games. I would have expected a lot cleaner play, and Matt and I watched the FAU Kansas State game and like the first half of the UConn Gonzaga game, and it was very, very good to see like a true big man have like a significant impact on a game with FAU, and it was equally disappointing to see like a true big man, Drew Timme, just like he shot his stats were essentially halved from what his averages were, and his shooting percentage was way down from what his average was too. And the games, like I didn't finish watching the UConn game because I was so disappointed with the effort Gonzaga was putting out. But the FAU game, I felt like it was good basketball, and there was a lot of play happening in the post, which warms my heart. I gotta give love to the big man. Like, I'm very happy about that.
No bias.
I'm changing San Diego State's name to Muck U or Muck University. I am so impressed with how ugly they made these games.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the majority of like pundits and, like we said, casual viewers are probably looking at these San Diego State games and being like, wow, that's just bad basketball. Like it's just an ugly brand of basketball being played. And it is an ugly brand of basketball being played, but like in the most beautiful way. Because they're just so good defensively. And they're so good at guarding threes that it's like they muck these games up. And it wasn't as impressive at the beginning of the tournament when they were doing it to like Charleston and Furman. But you look at like what they did to Alabama and what they did to Creighton, and it's just like it's a thing of beauty that I feel like most people wouldn't appreciate.
I talked about it from the start of our tournament like coverage is like when you can play excellent defense, you have a chance against anyone because you're bringing them down to your level. And at that point, when you get in those, late games, tight games, like it's just about who executes. And I mean, that's up for grabs then.
Yeah, I think I mean, watching people fly around and dog the ball and do all of these things I think it's good for somebody who has like a really good understanding of like the X's and O's for the sport. But again, it's not that fluid, sexy basketball. It's like ground and pound, and you're like grinding it out, and it's a slog. What that demonstrates for San Diego State is that they are prepared to go through and do like the stuff that isn't fun in order to win games. And if that means it looks like a certain way, that doesn't matter, because you might see the score 56-57, which is like a lot of high school games hit that number, right? You wouldn't expect that. And then you have other scores that are up in the 80s and 90s, and you wonder, well, how is that? And it's like, yeah, they just run these other guys ragged, and they're constantly badgering you. And I appreciate that for like the hustle factor and stuff. And I think it goes into this idea that, I saw an article that was talking about, well, like our teams, relying too much on the three. And it's like, yes, of course. Creighton shot 2 for 17, 11%, almost 12%. You can't win shooting 12% from behind the line, but you're putting too much faith in your 3-point shooting if you are missing that many and continuing to take them. Like establish a different part of the game, then bounce it out. And if you're still not hitting it, go back to what was working for you. So the level of being able to adapt, I think you're seeing like the flaws of some of the schools. You're seeing it in Alabama. They weren't able to adapt. You're seeing it with Gonzaga. I think they were tired. Same thing with Tennessee. I think they got tired because they had huge games and then they came up short in the next one.
Yeah, speaking of, San Diego State held Alabama to 3 of 27 from three. Alabama was one of, if not the best 3-point shooting schools in the country this season. But yeah, it's interesting because I agree with you, Clint. Like if the 3-pointers aren't falling, you should try to do something else. But watching that Creighton game, San Diego State was shutting down everything. Like they were forcing Creighton to back up and take threes just because like they couldn't even get an entry pass for most of that game. Like they're trying to get it down to Kalkbrenner, the 7-foot plus center. They couldn't even like they'd get it into him and all of a sudden Mensa's all over him. Like they just shut down everything, the passing lanes, and that's the part that's so impressive to me is that Creighton's like, okay, like we're going to try to run a play. Oh, can't do that. We're going to try to pass it down low. Can't do that. We're going to try to set some screens. Oh, can't beat them on the screen. We just have to back up and take a bad three. Like there was no other options. You're running out of shot clock.
How many points do you think Creighton's bench had?
7.
0.
Wow.
Yeah,
no field goals. No field goals made by the bench. And again, you can't win basketball games if you can't have like your subs come in and kind of carry the load a little bit so you can get coached up or get a little bit of a break. Alternatively, San Diego State's bench did very well. So I think a lot of that too, it's like definitely can tell where the work was put in and who wanted it more in that one.
Yeah. How did you guys feel about the end of the San Diego State Creighton game?
Yeah, I would say um if I'm a ref and the game's been pretty physical, I'm going to try and call it consistent with what it is. I'm certainly not going to interfere on a last chance shot to try and like having a game end on free throws is like real feels bad. And I think it hurts a little bit of the integrity of the referees to like, not be able to say, hey, like, whatever, miss or make, we'll go to overtime. Like, I think that would have been a better approach to that than letting them get the free throws.
Yeah, I think in that scenario, you should only be calling something if you are certain, like you are willing to die on that hill.
It's got to be egregious,
Yeah.
and I did not think that it warranted that. And from like the fan perspective too, I mean, is it fun to watch like James Harden sit back and shoot free throws? No. So like why that like it doesn't change in college either. Like I don't think that that's how I would have wanted that to play out. Like I would have liked to see more play after that, but unfortunately that's not what we got.
So I agree with you guys. I had a conversation about this with my dad actually, and he's like, if it's a foul, you got to call the foul. And I understand that point of view, but like you said, it's not egregious. I don't think it was enough to alter the course of that shot. Like I think if that guy didn't get touched, that ball's still not going in. And it wasn't enough of a foul for me to, in that situation, be like, we got to give this guy free throws and basically end the game. So I didn't like it either. Yeah. I was just wondering because I've heard dissenting opinions, heard opinions all over the place on what should be called. And I just like any other sport, man, I just hate it when a ref decides what the ending of a game is.
I would agree.
Yeah. That is definitely an opinion near and dear to my heart.
I know this is something that Matt is especially fond of, this opinion. But it kind of reminded me of the Super Bowl where the game was so great and so back and forth, and then the Chiefs get that penalty at the end, and it's just like, oh, okay, so instead of having an epic finish to this game and making it an all-time great, we're just going to take a couple knees and kick a field goal, and that's going to be it.
I mean, obviously, like, there's situations where, the refs kind of, their hand is forced, but I don't think that's what we saw this weekend.
So San Diego State, they're playing Florida Atlantic, who I'm calling FA who, not just because they're the Owls, but I think that FAU's probably been the biggest surprise of the tournament so far. It's easy to say as they're like the lowest seed in the Final Four. It's like, yeah, no shit. But you kind of look at them like they're 35-3.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that.
Yeah.
How is that like team that goes 35-3 like and it's like are these guys even relevant? Like who are these people?
Yeah, they're like out of conference schedule isn't that impressive, and I think that's kind of what held them back is that look at the culmination of their wins leading into the NCAA tournament, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's awesome that you're so good in Conference USA, but I think the best team they played this season was like Ole Miss, and they lost to Ole Miss in the beginning of the season. So
yeah, and I guess my counterpoint to that too, though, is like saw like Big Ten teams that couldn't even break 20 wins get 7 seeds. Like, I would rather you give a higher seed to a team that actually won games.
But that doesn't make billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now they're relying on FAU to make billions of dollars now.
Right.
So
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it turns out a team that won 35 basketball games this year is just good.
Yeah. Turns out they know how to win games at least 35 times.
Yeah. I do think though that they've gotten somewhat of a break on their road to the Final Four. They beat Memphis by 1 in the first round.
Yep.
They end up getting Fairleigh Dickinson in the second round instead of Purdue. They played Tennessee without, Tennessee was missing their point guard, Ziegler.
Yeah.
Super impressed with the Kansas State win, especially because Marquise Noel did go off on them.
I got a question for you, Adam. Did Kansas State lose that game or did it FAU win?
Can it be both?
Like, and again, I'm talking as if everybody can read my mind of the conversations that I had with Matt when we were watching this game. But in my opinion, Kansas State totally lost it. They had no backside or help side defense, and they were they literally had a handful of possessions where it was an easy lob pass in to a dunk. And all you had to do is have a help side guy there to kind of sandwich him in so he can't turn and get a clean shot off. And they didn't do that. So I think they lost that game more than FAU won that game.
Yeah, part of me, so I agree with you, but I also want to give FAU some credit because I just feel like it sounds dumb to say this in March Madness, but I just feel like FAU wanted it more.
Yeah.
The rebound battle was 41-16.
Yeah, we that was another thing that Matt and I hit on.
Yeah, they annihilated them.
Yeah.
I will say, the other thing about Kansas State, and this is kind of off topic, but we talked about who the potential breakout players of the tournament were going to be last week. I think we can all agree that Marquise Noel is the breakout player of the tournament. It's like the first player to have 40 plus assists in a tournament since Darren Williams when he was at Illinois. And he set the record for most assists in a tournament game with his 20 and 19 game, 19 assists. And it's so hard because as much as I love him, watching him jack up those dagger threes is so frustrating.
It's
so
infuriating.
Yeah,
but it's every time it's a bad decision.
Yeah, but I don't want to rein him in though, because it's all just part of who he plays, of how he plays.
Yeah,
it reminds me of Russell Westbrook in a way where it's if you're gonna get the best version of Russ, you have to let him be the balls to the wall, going 120% guy doing his
I don't
thing.
think you could ever get Russ to not be that guy.
No, but it's the same thing with Noel is I think that's just who he is and that's how he plays. And if you try to rein him in from taking the half court dagger threes that are unnecessary, that you also rein him in from making some of these insane passes that he's making and whipping the ball all around the court and just being that dude. It's all part of the package, but I feel like it cost him in this game as well.
Yeah.
So
it almost cost them a couple rounds in a row, honestly.
For as good as Noel is, it's a goddamn shame that he sets all of these records. And I don't think he needs to be reined in. I think he needs to get other talent around him. That's how you make him better. You make him not have to do the entire load. And I just wanted to bring this up. Looks like Kansas State is ranked 242nd for rebounds in the country per game. So that shouldn't be a big surprise, but you would want to see a little more effort when you're in a win or go home kind of situation. So I thought overall, I don't know if it's because the moment was really big and nobody else wanted to step up, so Noel did. But the offense in the second half was extremely stagnant. A lot of pound the ball. Shot clock isn't even below 24 seconds yet, and you're lobbing up shots from 36 feet out. That is really poor basketball. And when they go in, it's great, but when they don't, that's the result of that. And I think if you have one other guy who's got really good discipline and who has a skill set that complements Noel's, I think that game would have been vastly different. But when you have to shoulder all of the burden, eventually the team that is a little bit better built is just, it doesn't matter how good the best player is.
Yeah. So I actually would have loved to have seen more out of Keontae Johnson in that game.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's gonna be like probably a lottery pick, and ironically, like when he was on the floor in the game, he was actually pretty effective. But I think he played like 18 minutes because he could not stay out of foul trouble.
Yeah, his statistics kind of read like Timmy's in the fact that it's literally like you just divide him in half, and that's what he did.
Right.
So yeah, he was a little bit of underwhelming factor to that.
Yeah, I mean, the best ability is availability, and he was not available because he did not have the discipline on the defensive end of the floor to keep himself on the floor.
Yeah, I would agree.
Was the ending of that game just like the ultimate blue ball moment in sports? Like, Kansas State's down 3. Noel has the ball. He comes up. He passes it to his teammate, and his teammate like doesn't catch the pass, and it's like a turnover, and all of a sudden the game's over. Like they didn't even get a shot up. And you're just thinking like, okay, Noel, this is your moment, man. You're going to go down. You're going to take this game tying 3. It's going to be awesome. And it's just
that's
like
the dagger 3 he hits.
Yeah, it's just like, really went out with a whimper. It was just like I was really excited to see the shot, and then it was just like nothing.
You know what? Maybe now I shouldn't take that shot.
Yeah. Also, one more note on the game, because we're supposed to be talking about FAU.
I'm sorry, I derailed this.
It's like a half an hour on. No, I love Kansas State. I was not ready to stop watching Marquise Noel. I wanted them to win, not anything against FAU, just because I wasn't ready to stop watching him. He was incredible. But FAU turned the ball over 22 times and still won that game.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I actually, that's the point where it's like, I'm not even mad. I'm just impressed. Like, they got to clean that shit up against San Diego State, though. Like, we talked about how great San Diego State's defense is. And if you are going to help them with turnovers, then that game's already over.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the rebounding bailed FAU out, right? Like, their rebounding definitely like saved their sorry asses on the turnover front. San Diego State will not allow that opportunity.
No.
So they have a rude awakening in if they think that they can average, like I would say if there's more than 12 or 15 turnovers, that's going to guarantee a loss for them.
Yeah. Well, when we talked about how Kansas State just refused to learn on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
And look, if FAU does catch San Diego State making a mistake, that's not going to happen on the next possession. It will not.
FAU did something Kansas State did not do, and that was they made the extra pass.
Yeah.
Kansas State needed an extra pass in a vast majority of their possessions where they had a swing and they could have switched the court and had like weak side positioning like favorably, but they didn't make the extra pass, and FAU did. And I think that was really telling, and they exploited that when their defense couldn't make simple rotations. Or I don't want to say couldn't, they didn't. I think that those guys are capable of that, but it's like they neglected to do it. And the other thing was when Kansas State was shooting the ball, there was 2 guys standing watching the ball while you saw in the entire team of red jerseys try and crash the boards. Nah, like that's not good.
Yeah, I was really impressed by the team game of FAU. You look at the points. Center had 14. The other guys had 13, 16, 17. Like, it's a very balanced attack. Everybody's doing their job. They're, like you said, they're moving the ball around, and the ball's always going to move faster than the defender does. There's a road for FAU to beat San Diego State. They already beat Tennessee, who's also an incredibly good defensive team, who was playing good defense at the time. Because FAU is actually good on the defensive side of the ball as well. Like, you wouldn't know it with a 79-76 win, but their defensive rating, they are 19th in the nation, which, somehow actually ahead of San Diego State. That's not the case in KenPom, as San Diego State is fourth in defense in KenPom, and FAU, I think, is 30th right now. So, depending on what advanced metrics you're looking at, it's a little bit different. But like FAU is a very good basketball team. It's a great team effort. I'm excited to see how they attack that San Diego State defense.
I'm really curious to see who's going to step up for FAU. So in the game against Kansas State, it was their big man. Like that was his show out game. That was like a really big moment for him in the tournament. And I think they're part of like their squad is like, okay, who's going to shoulder or step up and try and take control of the things. And I think it'll be interesting to see how and who takes that like responsibility. I hope it comes organically and it's not forced. I just hope that they play their game, and whoever establishes their rhythm and their shots first, just feed them, and that'll get other people involved. So I think that'll be really curious, and I don't really know who's going to be able to do that. I think San Diego State's going to have a better idea of how to defend, their center, or get him into foul trouble so that he isn't making easy shots. Like I think if you would have just disrupted or gotten in the way of some of his shots, like it's a really big thing, and that didn't really happen. So
yeah, I feel like San Diego State's answer is just like, hey, we have this guy Mensa who's a fucking beast. Like, he's been amazing the last couple of games, man. Just swatting shots all over the place. Like I'm excited to see that matchup because FAU's center I think is like 7-1, something like that. But Mensa just like shut down Kalkbrenner for like an entire game too, who's a good offensive center who's over 7 feet tall. So I think it's gonna be a good game. Like it'll be fun. I know there are people who are casual fans who are like, oh, I'm not gonna watch it because it's not Duke and North Carolina, but they're two teams.
No, it's better.
No, it's Duke versus North Carolina wasn't very good this year. These teams are actually legitimately very good. It's basically a 35-win team going up against one of, if not the best defenses in the nation. Like, it's a great game. Ignore the seeds.
Yeah, I mean, I think this will be a very interesting kind of back and forth chess match of a game, but man, if you get stuck playing San Diego State's game, it's hard to out San Diego State.
I think the tenor for FAU, they got to be physical. They got to be willing to accept San Diego State's like physicality, and they need to be ready to get punched in the mouth. Like everybody, I think who said that? Mike Tyson. Everybody's got to play until they get hit in the mouth. It's like, okay, you guys need to be able to be resilient, and you need to swing back. And I think that that's like their path to victory. I think they got to be aggressive, and this is certainly one of those situations where like you need to exceed or like rise above what you think San Diego is going to bring to you. And, your collective needs to be bigger than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. And I mean, I think situational awareness is so important here too. Like with such an imposing defensive team coming up against you, having that situational awareness is so key, because if you have that chance to get an easy bucket on a fast break, like the five guys you got on the floor had better be alert and ready to take advantage of that. Because if you give them a chance to get back in defense on the fast break, suddenly it's not easy to anymore.
Transition basketball is really important.
Yeah. And this is probably going to be a pretty tight game, and 2 points can make a significant difference at the end of the game.
Yeah. I think the other trap that they need to get into is like, you don't have, if you get down 10 or 12 points, that isn't a situation where you have to shoot yourself back into a game from behind the arc. Like, you just got to be patient and play good defense and capitalize on the stops that you get. And I don't know. I'm going to be very interested to see how that kind of pans out, because I think that's kind of been the trend for a lot of the like our blue blood teams, right? Like, I think the biggest perpetrator of that I've seen, or that I've consistently seen, is Duke. Like, they get down a little bit and they feel like they got to shoot themselves back into the game, and it either works or it catastrophically fails, and then they're just screwed. And it's like not fun to watch the second half because the outcome is almost determined. So, in the regard of like that, I don't want to see him get him so antsy because of, you know, the thing, like where we're playing and stuff. And I think another big thing to keep in mind is that the stadiums that they're playing in now are so big that the atmosphere is much different than playing in like a standard gymnasium. So like the ceilings are much further away. Like it really makes a difference. I was fortunate enough to play at the Palace when I was in college, and it was jarring, like, to say the least. And I know like a lot of my teammates felt that way too. So that's and that was going from like a collegiate gym to like a professional NBA gym, and these guys are playing in stadiums that are much bigger than that.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, I even remember there were guys saying that playing in the NBA during the bubble, like playing these stadiums without fans, like it's not necessarily the difference in the atmosphere, but like it messes with your visual when you're in a stadium that big and suddenly there's no fans and you're used to playing in like loaded stadiums.
yeah, I would agree with that too.
It'll be interesting for sure. I'm looking forward to, I mean, I guess I'm looking forward to the whole weekend. I can't say I'm looking forward to one game more than the other, but let's talk about the other game, Miami versus UConn. Bigger brand names here, especially UConn in basketball, who's a blue blood. And we've talked about this previously on the podcast, that UConn has actually had the most success of any school, winning 4 championships since 1999. But Miami on a super impressive run right now. They had Drake in the first round, kind of a tough matchup. They crushed what I thought was a good Indiana team in the second round. Turns out that they're just a Big Ten team, and that should just be par for the course. Beat Houston by 14, and then beat a very good Texas team this past week to get to the Final Four. I'm not going to get too much into it, but the ending of the Texas game drove me absolutely insane. The selfish play by Texas's point guard, I hate that shit. But Miami's been awesome, man. And it shouldn't be super surprising if you look at their coach's tournament history. Jim Larinaga, they went to the Final Four as a double-digit seed last year. Or not the Final Four. They went to the Sweet 16 as a double-digit seed last year. And also, I don't know if everybody knows this, but he led George Mason to the Final Four back in 2005. I did not know that until I started doing my research before the tournament. I was like, oh, damn, that's that guy. So
yeah,
he knows how to win in March, man.
As soon as you said that, I was like, I know that name. He did something really big. I can't remember where.
I think there is like basketball pedigree with him. And I think even though Miami isn't necessarily like a basketball school, when you have someone who has that pedigree and who has done it before, I think that instills confidence in your players. And it's a little bit of like a morale boost to say, okay, like, yeah, this guy knows his shit. Yeah. He took somebody who nobody had any idea about and got them to the Final Four. And then you start seeing, you know, like VCU, Wichita State, and these other smaller kind of schools who kind of flirt around, you know, George Mason or whatever getting into. So I think that he's a really good coach. And I think Miami's going to be ready to play on the first.
I hate to tell Hurricane fans this, but I think Miami might be a basketball school now.
Yeah.
I know they like to think they're a football school, but the last time that Miami was relevant in football, I was 10. So, like, they're in the Final Four. Guess what, Miami? Congratulations. You're a basketball school now.
Ain't no shame in that.
No, it can be a great thing with other ACC powers like Duke and North Carolina. You're a basketball school. Good for you.
One could argue they're a better basketball school now.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to see. I mean, deep run last year as a double-digit seed.
Yeah.
Come back, make a Final Four this year. My thing I like the most about Miami is it just feels like every single game in this tournament, it's been someone else stepping up. It's a different guy. You look at like the top performer in every game they've played so far, and it's a different starter. So it's just they're so variable in like how they attack you, and it can just come from anybody. You don't know who it's going to be in this game.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of building off of what Clint was saying about Jim Larrañaga instilling a lot of confidence in those players because of what he's done before, but like because he's been there, there's that inherent trust in him. And when they can have that trust in him, that makes it a lot easier for them to trust each other. And like that is so common in sports where the downfall is for a team is not trusting your teammate to do the thing. And you try to overcompensate for it. And then that's where everything falls apart.
Well, I mean, you saw it in Texas, right? Like prime example.
Yeah.
I cannot get the end of the Texas game out of my head. Fucking Marcus Carr. So the reason it drove me so crazy is because if Texas would have made the Final Four, I would have come in second in our pool. And if Texas won the national championship, I would have come in first. So I was rooting for them. And for him to play that selfish down the stretch, not only on offense, but then to take the stupid foul on defense.
Yeah.
I hated it. But yeah, and the other thing I like about Miami, though, is that they can win in so many different ways. So we talked about 3-point shooting and we talked about like adapting to what's working and what's not. They hit 11 threes versus Houston, come back, and they're down 10 points in the second half with 10 minutes left to go against Texas. They come all the way back without hitting a 3 in the second half, and they hit 2 for the game.
Yeah.
So like they don't rely on any one thing or any one player too much. They're variable in how they attack. They can adapt to any situation. And I would be inclined to pick them to make the national championship if they weren't playing the best goddamn basketball team I've ever seen in UConn.
We had kind of talked about like the points differential for UConn and how their games, I guess from like an outsider's perspective, have not been very compelling to watch. Like they've all been enormous blowouts. I think we were talking about their out of conference schedule. They played extremely well. And I think that is a pretty big boon for them, just as far as like, hey, you know, we rolled through all those jokers and we haven't had a problem. So, I mean, that's a really big swagger boost, I guess you could say, going into this game because they haven't been challenged. I think they're going to be a little bit more rested just from that, like the effort and the mental taxation of having a bunch of close games. And, you know, Miami didn't have you know, as many close games as I would have liked, but I think UConn's definitely has the edge in that category.
Yeah, UConn has won their tournament games by 22.5 points per game so far. Most recently with a 28-point win over Gonzaga.
I was really disappointed in that. I was I wanted Gonzaga to win just because I think Drew's a really good story, and I think you know, he does like the fundamentals and things correctly, which is really fun for me to watch. But they came out flat, and it looked like the air had been taken out of their sails. And you can't win games when you can't establish an inside game. And, you know, like Joe is a non-factor, which you can't really say in a lot of the games that he plays in. But unfortunately, I think they were just gassed, and that's really tough when you are playing against someone whose average margin of victory is 20, almost 23 points.
We talked about this a little bit this weekend, Clint. I just find it very disappointing to see this be the way that Drew Timmy's college career ends, because he's been such a phenomenal college athlete. And, it is disappointing that now he's probably like a late second round guy when he might have been, a lottery pick earlier in his career. And he still didn't get it done, even staying 4 years. And that's not all on him, obviously, but he definitely left some things to be desired this past weekend. Sometimes playing UConn will do that to you.
I think my text for him is your draft stock has changed. And if you're going to go in the second round, like a decent team might pick you up.
Yeah.
And that's where like you don't have to worry about being the guy to get it done. You're not going to be the savior, and you have time to develop and adjust to an NBA game. And I think that's like a silver lining in this. And I'm sure if Timmy heard me, he'd be like, shut the hell up. Like I just lost the game that I was supposed to win. You know what I mean? So it doesn't help like make that loss feel any better, because there's no moral like victories in basketball. Like a loss is a loss. But moving forward, I think that's like, if you're a Timmy fan, that's something that you can be cautiously optimistic for looking forward to.
I'll still take Timmy in the draft.
Oh, yeah.
You guys know how I feel about it. Is like we just get to a point in the draft where people are taking swings on dudes who can't play basketball and are just like able to jump out of the gym. Give me the Timmys and the Luke Garzas of the world who maybe he's the 8th, 9th guy on my bench, but he's like a valuable piece to me, and I know he's going to be good. So
I think if you pick Timmy, like if you have a future like mindset, I think he's a guy that you can build a team around. And that's not to say he is going to be the absolute, dominating scorer, but he is a guy who will quietly make everyone around him better, like Tim Duncan did. And I think that is extremely valuable. And it's a lot of people undervalue that, because he's willing, like when he's got his head in the game, he's willing to do the stuff that other people don't want to do. Like he's willing to get the rebounds. He's willing to make sacrifice his body, go up and make the tough shots so he can create, opportunities for other people. I think that's really good. And I would want him on my team. Like I would pick him in the draft, but again, it's not that sexy pick that is going to get the newspapers and all these other things going. You're not going to get Nike ads for him. You're going to get hard work and results in the future.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like I would take him. He's projected as like a second round pick. I'd take him like in the 20s.
Yeah,
like give me that guy. I also think that's the shirt for this week. We have 2 options. We have hashtag not wrong yet, which I need. The other one is Timmy Duncan.
There we go.
Tim Duncan with like the porn stash.
Oh fuck yeah!
I love it, Timmy Duncan.
All right, I'll do a side and say we'll have an AI generate the art for us for them. We'll put Drew, Timmy, and Timmy Duncan in and see what horrific eldritch abomination we get out of that.
It's just gonna be worse than Loeb.
Just don't take like the inverse integer of whatever you guys were saying earlier, because it's gonna be some like awful non-Euclidean geometry from beyond the stars that's gonna like haunt all of us.
God, that's a podcast in and of itself. I could talk about AI generated art all day. Fun fact for the viewers out there who enjoy the sound of my voice, I have a minor in art, believe it or not. And I was an art nerd in college. So
yeah, no, Clint can actually draw quite well.
Yeah, when it gets to the point where it's just Matt and I talking about regular season baseball, we'll say fuck it and do an art episode.
I am down. I am down.
But
Visual medium on an audio podcast. I love it. I love this.
It's beautiful. It's like, all right, now we want all you to close your eyes and picture.
It's our shtick. Well, it's my shtick, obviously.
And I appreciate you that much more for it.
Matt has evolved into not only doing custom backgrounds every week, but making his own custom backgrounds every week. And they're animated. And no one can see them except for us on the Zoom. And that's the best part of the entire shtick.
If you guys ever start a Patreon, that should be like your top tier like subscription thing, is to just to be able to, you don't get to see the video. You just get to see Matt's like gifts that he makes.
Funny story. We do have a Patreon. Patreon.com/fouledoutsports, where you can get additional fouled out content, extra podcast every month for just $3. And if you want to see Matt's art, $10 a month.
There you go.
Top tier, baby. But let's get back to UConn. UConn dominating the tournament so far. Number 1 in Ken Pom, 3rd in offense, 11th in defense, dominating on both sides of the ball. I feel like I kind of forget that they're a blue blood sometimes, because I would argue that they're the most likable blue blood. You know, if you think about who the true blue bloods are in college basketball, it's like Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas. Some of the old heads would tell you got to include like Indiana and UCLA in there, but that's not such a modern thing.
I would disagree with that at this current juncture.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. But I mean, out of like the blue blood teams, UConn is the most likable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in large part it's because they do things, and this is going to be another visual gag for an audio podcast. They do things the right way, in quotation marks. They're not playing like the one and done game. They never really have.
No.
Even looking back at their other 4 championship teams from 1999 till now.
Kemba was there for like 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm. That's where I'm going is.
Yeah.
So they've won 4 championships since 1999. In 99, they were led by Rip Hamilton, who was a junior. 2004 was Ben Gordon, who was a junior, and Emeka Okafor, who was a junior.
Dude, he was Block City.
Mm-hmm. Well, this was back when you could be over 19 years old and still be a high draft pick.
Right.
Because I think he went like first, didn't he?
He was up towards the top. I don't know if he was first.
It was first or second.
Didn't he go to Charlotte?
So, but Ben Gordon, also a junior on that team. Charlie Villanueva was a freshman on that team, but I don't think he came out until a little bit later. We don't, for Matt's sanity, we don't have to talk about Charlie Villanueva on this podcast.
I hear, the one thing that comes to mind with Charlie Villanueva
is it something to do with Kevin Garnett? Yeah.
Dude, that guy hit the lottery, got an enormous payday for literally just showing up. Like,
yeah.
What a disappointment for Detroit.
I wasn't going to say it. And then Clint's just like, yeah, here you go, Matt.
No, I'll put the dagger in.
It's a understatement.
Well, it's kind of funny that Ben Gordon and Charlie Villanueva won a national championship together at UConn.
Yeah.
And then like fuck the Pistons together also. So
right.
Well,
I mean, it's so wild to me how tactfully Joe Dumars was able to put together that championship team and then immediately turns around and makes like the 3 worst decisions that the franchise has ever made.
Yeah. Fucked him up for years. Joe Dumars needs to get an entire new mattress after shitting the bed that hard. But I think like the tail of the tape 3. There, the tail of the tape there is coaching, like, and then personalities, obviously. But like,
yeah, no, I will die on the hill that like Larry Brown is one of the best basketball coaches I've ever seen, and if they hang on to him for a 3rd year, like Detroit's still like they might have been back there in the NBA championship again.
Yeah, you know what's a good combination? Having Larry Brown and Chauncey Billups on your team.
Yeah, I enjoyed that until it made me cry.
I think Joe Dumar's strategy with Ben Gordon and Charlie Villanueva was like, well, the last time I got a guy from UConn, it worked out really well because that was the aforementioned Rip Hamilton. And he's like, what if I get two guys from UConn?
It's incredible to see how like Larry Brown did with Detroit, and then like the contrast between like that and Allen Iverson's 76ers, like vastly different teams.
Yeah.
That was able to still make really deep runs with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think Larry Brown can be a little grating at times.
Yeah, I would say so.
And you know, one of the greatest moments in sports interview history was provided to us out of like that relationship. Talking about practice, man.
Right.
Practice. Not a game. Practice. I think the UConn situation, being a likable blue blood, is, I think overall, I would say it's refreshing to see them kind of come back to a power position and reestablish themselves and say that the one and done is not the only way to get to the Final Four, to have success in college basketball. And I think from my perspective, that's like really cool. I like seeing teams develop and be able to play together for more than just one season. And I think like you're seeing that resiliency in the scores from the tournament for them.
That's another thing I just really like about this Final Four too, is that the top prospect in this entire Final Four is Andrew Hawkins, the guard from UConn. He's currently like a late 20s draft pick. And it's pretty much because he's an absolute sniper from deep. So there are no one and done guys. Like, these are upperclassmen led teams that have played together for a long time. And in a tournament where you have so much variance and just so much like anything could happen, it helps to have that couple years of experience to fall back on playing with these guys. The other one thing I wanted to mention, I was going on about the UConn championship teams. Just wanted to mention that in 2011, Matt, you were right, Kemba led them to a championship as a junior. And then 2014, they had Boatwright, who was a junior, and Napier, who was a senior, lead them to a championship. So all of their championship teams that in that same vein, no one and dones. And even the guys who were high NBA draft picks were older. They were upperclassmen. So
aside from this stuff, one of the things that I felt was kind of like a shame, and I know records and all of these other things, but like you have the NCAA's leading scorer not even grace the tournament. And I think that's a damn shame, mostly because it's one of our hometown boys. Antoine Davis, I believe that's how you would say that, from Detroit Mercy. Averages 28. I just wanted to kind of bring that up because, we were talking about like offensive players and Noel being, like a powerhouse, and this guy, 28.2 points a game. His rebounds are a little lackluster, and he's shooting 41%. Not many assists either, just under 4. However, I think to do that at the collegiate level is something special, and it's unfortunate that we didn't get to see that as well, like as part of, the festivities of March Madness. I don't know if they earned that right. Obviously, like the committee didn't think that, but I just think that it's good to see somebody from Michigan being able to represent like the leaderboards in that regard in a big way. So not Final Four related, but I just wanted to put a shout out in there.
Reminds me of last year. We talked about this guy, Peter Kiss, led the NCAA in points per game, shooting a whopping 30% from 3. He was a guard last year, and he was shooting 45% from the floor, 30% from 3, led the entire nation in points. He was a chucker. He was a chucker, and he made the tournament last year. They were like a 16 seed, and it was hilarious. But
Kyrie was quietly calling him an actual basketball genius.
he's just like, this man. This is the evolution of basketball: is shooting 33s and making 5 of them.
Whatever works, I suppose.
Are we feeling brave enough to pick these games? My dad was like, "Hey, are you guys gonna make, or like, who are you gonna pick on the podcast this week?" And I was like, "I'm not touching that. Not after what's happened so far in this tournament. No way."
I'm not scared of being wrong. I was wrong all last time, so I'll be wrong this week too. So, man, I'm gonna go FAU based on their unis. Red and blue looks good, and then I am hard to argue UConn's just like point spread. Like, I don't think you'd get that result without knowing exactly what you're doing. So I'm gonna go with FAU UConn.
Yeah, I'm gonna go San Diego State UConn with UConn obviously eventually taking it because I ain't betting against that kind of point spread.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I'm picking UConn to win the championship. I don't know. I guess I'll pick San Diego State to play them. Before the tournament started, the very first March Madness episode that we did, I mentioned that statistically and historically, you look at all the data, and there were 3 teams who could win the championship. And it was Alabama, Texas, and UConn. And I am hashtag not wrong yet, because UConn's still in it, and I need them to prove me right. And I don't know. It feels like on one hand, like Miami or San Diego State or FAU could give UConn a good game.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I can see a world where UConn wins both games by 20, and we're just like, God damn, that's the best college basketball team we've seen in a little while.
Yeah.
Then you sure can say hashtag scoreboard, and then it's just like
hashtag correct about one thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and then that first episode, we really hammered home the point about defense. Defense is the one thing universally across the board that champions can actually do. And what do you know? We have 4 teams left that can actually play defense.
Well, contrary to popular belief, too, that's not a talent. That's not a talent issue. That's an effort and an attention to detail and a discipline issue.
Yeah.
So it's in that aspect, I think it's really refreshing that we have that, and it's not just going to be a bunch of yahoos like throwing up 3-pointers and making it look like like a all-star game kind of deal. Like, I think that it's definitely going to be down to who's going to do the dirty, nasty things that nobody else wants to do, like moving our feet, getting in position. That's another thing that Matt and I were talking about the FAU game, is that court awareness and positioning for FAU's defense was relatively good. And they did a lot of making sure that they were not in the half circle for, getting ready to try and take charges and these kinds of things. So those are the things that, like, it's not glamorous and it's not fun, but that's what wins games.
Yeah, it's a good point. So we're all going UConn. My only worry about UConn at this point is that I feel like everybody would pick UConn right now. And whenever you're in a position where like 80% or more of the general public is picking a team, you never want to be on that team. Like, it's a trap.
Yeah. So put all your money on FAU.
Obviously.
Or Miami.
But that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Twitter at Fouled Out Sports. You can find Matt on Twitter at Matador_defense. And you can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It is a long name, but you can't miss it. This is it for basketball for a while on the podcast, because April is NFL draft month on Fouled Out. That's one of Matt and my favorite events to do every year. So 5 straight NFL draft podcast starting next week with answering the biggest questions of the 2023 NFL draft. Clint, you got any NFL draft hot takes for us?
No. I think I do have a hot take. Quarterback hand size is bullshit and it doesn't matter. Also, there's way too many analytics. And another aside, I fucking hate listening to these idiots talk about intangibles like it means something when it doesn't. They got the intangibles. Now, I can't tell you what that is, but they got it. It's like, you're so full of fucking hot air. It's not even right. You might as well go power a balloon.
I can't tell you because it's intangible.
Yeah,
can't touch it.
When they say intangibles, it's like when we're working with our families and parents talk about respect, but never actually say what they mean by respect.
Yeah,
like
black and white terms. Come on, let's go. Support the Patreon, guys. I learned something new every time, and if you do, you'll be able to see Matt's wonderful artwork. If you guys hit that incentive, I will do a college level critique of Matt's gifts for the Art Sense. So if you get, I don't know, Adam, I don't know what the number is, but we'll do it. If we get it there, you guys get it there, I'll do it.
We'll make
that'll be my off season.
That'll go on the Patreon. Thing. Beautiful. So Clint, thank you again for being here. We when we get back to basketball, we'll have you back. We'll have other fan favorite Devin come on to join us as well. Post NFL draft. And then Matt, I will see you next week for NFL draft episode number 1.
Yeah.
Ooh, baby.
Time for me to get all coked up.
I'm excited for you guys. I had a lot of fun. Again, I just want to say thanks. It's a blessing that you guys give me the opportunity to come and flap my gums about shit I think I know about. So I want to, say thank you for that. And I've really appreciated it. And I look forward to coming back.
We look forward to having you back. Flapping our gums about shit that we think we know about is the point of the podcast. That's why we started it. So,
I mean, it wasn't by accident I chose what I chose for my background today. So
it's a beautiful thing. So, all right, guys, we will see you soon. Enjoy the basketball this weekend. And we will see you next week.
Yep. Be safe out there.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, Robin.
Bye, Mom.